Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Transitions Collective. I'm your host, Mary Clavier. This week I'm speaking with Kelly Gonsalves from Totally Booked. Totally Booked is a bookkeeping service, and Kelly and I are going to be talking all about finances, how to keep track of your money, what systems to use, all of those great fun things that people like to ignore in their business but shouldn't. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hi, Kelly. Thanks for being on the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yes, we're talking all things bookkeeping. Super important for my audience.
Yes. As not fun as it may seem, it is actually important.
Yes. And something that a lot of people tend to either avoid or, run the other way from.
Yeah, like the plague. People think it's like the kind of thing where if they're like, if I just put my head down, it'll eventually go away. Like, nobody's gonna notice. Yeah, I get it.
And then they wake up months later to a snowball and they're like, oh no.
Yeah, exactly. Because it is going to eventually catch up to you.
Yes, totally. Oh my goodness, it's happened to me before. Okay, great. So can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah. So I am Kelly Gonsalves. I am based out of New York City. I'm an advanced certified pro advisor, which means I'm certified in QuickBooks Online, advanced certified in QuickBooks Online. I was also named a top 50 cloud accountant in 2018 in North America. And I am part of the national training network for Intuit, who is the parent company of QuickBooks. So I teach other bookkeepers and accountants, as well as small businesses, how to use QuickBooks. I went to school for business administration, so this was not really there, but like kind of in that wheelhouse, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then I came out and did a whole bunch of other things. And I wound up taking a QuickBooks class, and that's actually what kind of put me onto it. And I ran with it from there, and I love it.
Awesome. Yes, good that you love it so that you can help the rest of us.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I want to jump right into bookkeeping, and I have a lot of questions about how people should get set up and all of that stuff. Awesome. What are the most important things for people to keep in mind when they're looking at their books or, they've started their business? What should they be doing in terms of capturing their numbers or looking at their numbers?
So I always say the first thing you should do is start a separate bank account or credit card. So if you plan to use a credit card, when you're mixing personal and business, it's really hard to keep track of things. And also, for tax filing purposes, if you needed to go back and look up a charge, it's very difficult to differentiate what was personal and what was business. And it doesn't have to be a business bank account with high fees. Just a separate bank account will do. It can just be, just a simple checking account. But that is, for me, number one, right? So when you've obviously already established, let's say, your name and what type of entity you're going to be. Now you have your federal ID number, take that paper, go to the bank and start a bank account. And I say that's important even prior to setting up something like QuickBooks or Xero or any type of accounting software, because it's going to set you up to do it the right way from the beginning. A lot of people wait until they've already either mixed their bank accounts and their transactions all together, or they have now been in business for a while and they're deciding, like, let's get started, and it's just kind of a jumble of expenses and income, and now we're differentiating between the two. So it's really starting the account, starting the credit card, and then essentially, if I had my way, it would be then starting the software and starting from day one, right? Pulling everything in from day one, and we're going to do it all the right way. But definitely establish that separate bank account. That is major.
Mm-hmm. And so that brings up a good point, because probably a lot of people don't necessarily start the software right away. Maybe that's like a bigger commitment than they're thinking. I don't know if you see that or not, but if they don't start the software right away, what should they be doing in the meantime?
So there's some options, right? So you have, and I'm going to speak to QuickBooks because that's my specialty.
Yes.
So there are others out there, but so QuickBooks offers several products, right? So you have Mint, which is for your personal planning and finance. And then you have something called QuickBooks Self-Employed, which is actually where I started. So I wasn't sure 100% what to do, or what I wanted to do, I should say, in the beginning. But I wanted to be able to invoice clients, take payment online, keep track of my income and my expenses, right? Get all of that stuff in order. And I want to say it's $5 a month. It might even be cheaper than that if you're committing to a full year. But it plugs right into that separate bank account that you just started, and it starts to categorize things just to the best of its knowledge. Like McDonald's will be a meal, Starbucks is a meal, Shell is gas, and it starts to do that for you. And it's actually a very simple setup because it doesn't have a complicated chart of accounts. So it's going to make it very easy to understand. Gas, meals, office supplies, stuff that's like pretty simple, basic, but it's still going to help you give something to your CPA at the end of the year. And then as your business grows, you can graduate up. A lot of people start on, let's say, like an Excel sheet. The problem is it's not scalable. And as they start to grow, they try and make that same system fit. And now you have like some jumbled Excel sheets, or you have a lot of Excel sheets, because when they're like, oh, it didn't really fit in this category, it didn't really fit in this process, so I just started a new one, and I put all of this over here and this over there, and I have this sheet and this sheet and this sheet, and it's like, nobody would be able to make sense of the flow of your work, your workflow, which also just makes it more difficult. And then a lot of business owners are like, oh, well, I have to hold on to it then. I can't give it to anybody because it's so difficult. I've set up this crazy system that I have to be the only one. And now they're limiting their time on when they can work in their business and, really on their business, which is what they're supposed to be doing. And they're, sitting at the kitchen table late at night, essentially, and trying to figure out, this is my income sheet, and this is my expense sheet, and this was my assets, and who knows what they've, created. So to me, the software is it's a pretty big deal, right? So when you look at, even the cost, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, you have to pay for QuickBooks, but if you go through, let's say somebody like me, there's a discount involved, or if you really just look at it, the investment that you're making into the business, it's going to save you so much time. Just even being able to send an invoice and have somebody pay you online, that's major, right? So now you're in your cash flow, you're not waiting for a check in the mail, you've gotten that payment, it's deposited the next day, it's like a beautiful, seamless thing, right? And then on the back end, it's putting it into the right income category, and you can then put in your expenses because you bought this thing to sell it to your client, whatever it might be, right? So it's, when they say they're not ready for the software, I feel like if you're in business, you're probably ready, right? In some capacity, you're ready for something. Just to be a little more organized and just not have it be as painful.
Even if it's just basic. You have to start somewhere, and that's like the groundwork. I kind of look at finances and bookkeeping in the same category as legal, as like you need your money set up correctly, you need your legal stuff set up correctly, and then you kind of grow into some of the other things.
Well, they kind of go hand in hand, right? So even like establishing an entity. Some people go to a lawyer, some people go to a CPA, because they really do kind of like overlap there, right? And then just deciding what kind of entity you have to be. Like I work with my CPA, but that's also something that legal does for you. Makes sense.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay, great. So those are some of the basics. How do they know when it's time to grow and kind of adapt to their finances to a different process? Because you mentioned, it's scalable.
So if you're setting up a system and you're starting to grow and you have the system in place, one, the scalable factor is that it kind of has to be teachable, right? So like I said, if you have these, 5 different spreadsheets that you've created this system that only you understand, it's going to be a lot harder to grow that system or to hand it off, right? It's going to be a little difficult. It's heartbreaking when I have to tell a business owner, I'm like, I'm sorry, this is not, like, we got to scrap this, and I know you spent a lot of time on it, I'm so sorry, but I can't do anything with these, and we're going to have to start here, but but I think if you're spending a lot of time working on that stuff, and you're not able to then spend time in your business, either making the product that you're selling or seeing people or going out and networking or whatever it is, and this has now consumed you, then it's probably time to meet with somebody and either hand it off or get some tips on how to so I meet with people and I just train them. I'm like, this is what you do. And, come back to me if you're lost or if you have questions, but essentially I can set you up to, start the right way and then go through it yourself. But if you're putting yourself in the right system, it shouldn't be painful and it shouldn't take an extreme amount of time.
And then how often do you recommend people, if they do have a system in place and the software in place, how often should they be looking at that?
So if it was up to me, it would be at least once a week. But I'm a little more realistic. I would say every 2 to 3 weeks, and absolutely at month end, you should be closing your month. So you should be reconciling your books, making sure that what the bank has on file is what you have on file. Banks still make mistakes. I know that we're in the age of like automation and AI and all this crazy stuff, but it was 6 months ago, we had a large deposit in one of my clients' accounts, and I said, hey, you didn't tell me about this deposit. And they said, that is not our money. So they had to go back to the bank. The bank had, transfixed the number somewhere. They deposited to the wrong account, had to remove it from their books. And then even that, I had to record an entry for that deposit and then removing the money, right?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Someone else was looking for their money.
Right?
Oh, my goodness.
Did no one call? Did no one ask where this money went?
Yeah.
But it's making sure that what you have matches the bank, and then also it helps with fraud. So if you're going through your transactions on a fairly routine basis, you're going to catch if there's an oddball charge or a large charge that, let's say, Amex didn't alert you to. What's nice about all these apps and online and in the cloud, you can get them all on your phone, so I can pull up from the most basic level of QuickBooks to the most advanced. I can see my charges if I want to. Obviously, you can go into your online banking, but you can also go in and see your charges there and get an idea of, something's off. So I would say weekly, but I do concede that it's probably going to happen every 2 to 3 weeks, and definitely a month end. Month end is major.
Okay. Well, I mean, and if you have a system in place and you're using the software with it instead of a spreadsheet, it should make it seem less daunting to be able to check in.
So automation, right? You can automate a lot of these things. You can set up rules that say every time you see Shell, make it gas. Every time you see Staples, make it office supplies, right? So you can set up a lot of rules. You can even set up custom reports to pull out certain expenses if you want to see just that or a certain time period. But definitely it will be less daunting especially if you do things the same all the time, right? So if you go to the same coffee shop all the time, you go to the same gas station, it's going to add those things for you. And then all you have to do is check them at the end of the month. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I love all that stuff. I'm like, check your stuff.
Yeah. Because then obviously at the end of the year, you're trying to like roll all that up and show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. So the other part is your CPA will thank you for it when you hand them a report, not like 12 months worth of bank statements, right? When you're like, here's the report, and here's, maybe, I don't know, whatever else they might ask for, the year-end bank statement, and let's say a balance sheet or something. So they're really going to ask for specific reports, and being able to produce those is such a time saver, and it should save you money. If they're not having to dig around in your bank statements and figure out how you spent and where you spent and so on, it should save you some money as well.
So I think another thing that I've heard questions about is what people can spend their business money on. Maybe you get that too.
Yeah, I get that a lot. So I always say it depends on your business, right? So if you are a traveling consultant, then you're going to be able to expense, let's say, your airfare and your meals while you're traveling, because that's something that's part of your business model. It's necessary to get business done. Whereas if you are I am in a co-working space. If you manage a co-working space or you own a co-working space that is here, it's unlikely that you're going to have to travel around the world and do all of these other things, right? So it's going to change according to the type of business that you run. And also your CPA's discretion sometimes, right? So some of them are a little more lenient than others, and they know what they can and can't get away with. And obviously they went to school for just that. But if I see something glaringly obvious on my client's books, I'm not going to put it through as a business expense, right? So I'm going to say that this will never hold up in court, so to speak, right? So if we're audited, this is not something that's going to fly. So I've had clients that spend money on expensive clothing and lavish vacations. But if you want a brick and mortar, that's not something that was necessary. I do love but it's wardrobe. Yeah, I've gotten that one a lot, like wardrobe. And
I've never thought of that.
The last time I remember a CPA asking me about clothing, I think I worked in a retail store and I had to buy a uniform. And they were like, uniform can be expensed.
Oh yeah. Right.
I don't recall anyone ever saying like, do you have your Gap receipts and H&M and like, let's get those all together for the wardrobe expense.
Right.
But I've had clients that are like, oh yeah, that's wardrobe. I'm like, no, it's not really. Maybe you're a model of some sort, but
but usually they should cover it, right? Even if you had to do like TV appearances, I mean, you're still, it's just that's not what you're going on the TV for, right?
Yeah, so it does depend on your business, but they all kind of come down to the same like core model of has to be, necessary for your business. It has to be part of what you're doing, part of what you're selling or making or whatever it is, your service, right?
Or maybe like conferences or like something that's continuing education related to your business.
Yeah, so like I go to several conferences a year and I do put that in as continuing education. And it's something where it is industry focused. I can pull up a website if I had to. I can show somebody exactly what it is. And it's very much bookkeeping, accounting related.
Yeah.
But when people are going to Hawaii for the week, it's a little harder to explain, right? So I try and say err on the side of caution. I'd rather that you were more conservative and at least present it to your CPA when they're filing and say like, hey, I'm not sure if this falls under an expense. If it does, can we add it in? If it's not, just leave it flexible. But, I always have like an ask file. So like try and keep things that you're not too sure about and then ask them at the end of the year before they put that tax return in.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. That way you just get clarification.
Yeah, you can even create like a custom report if you had like I can create an Ask Mary, right? And we would keep some stuff in there that we weren't too sure of and then just go over it with the CPA and make sure it's in the right place.
Oh, that's a good idea. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, because during the year, I mean, then you'll forget, sometimes you forget.
Yeah, right. So like put some notes on it, put it into the special category. Right. And then also realistically, in an ideal world, you're not only speaking to your CPA at the end of the year. If you have a question, you should be able to reach out and ask them. Right. Some people live in perpetual fear of their CPA, but it shouldn't be that type of relationship. So if you had a question, you should be able to say like, hey, do you mind taking a look at this? I'm not sure where to put it. Or my bookkeeper has a question, can she take a look or can she speak to you about it or whatever it is?
Yeah.
I try and make it a point to introduce myself to everyone's CPA.
Yeah. Well, first you're saying check your books like every week to 2-3 weeks. And then you're saying like talk to your CPA more than the end of the year. No, that's great. I mean, it's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah,
this is why we're talking.
It's like frightening.
Right.
Situation. And it shouldn't feel like every time you pick up the phone, they're going to charge you for it, right? So it's like you have a quick question. That's supposed to be what they're there for.
Right.
I wouldn't say call them, in the morning of April 15th and be like, hey, I had this quick question, but
right.
After that, you'll be all right.
but still, just to be able, just the whole approaching your money, not from fear.
Yes.
And not having a fear mindset about it.
It's not something to be scared of.
Right.
And the people that are helping you management shouldn't be scary. It shouldn't be like, oh my God, my bookkeeper's coming. Oh crap, I didn't do all these things. It shouldn't feel like that. It should be just like any other, business relationship. It's something that's important.
Right. So another question for you then related to types of businesses. So for example, I have a product business, Brief Transitions, and then I also do consulting, corporate consulting and some other work. What are any differences that you think people should look out for if they have a product business and a service business? Or is there anything that's very different that you should approach them the way you do the purchasing?
Yeah, your sales tax, right? So if you're selling a product, sales tax is going to come into play.
Mm-hmm.
And with the laws all now changing around e-commerce businesses, selling online, shipping out of
Mm-hmm.
state, all those different
Mm-hmm.
wonderful things that they've put
Yeah.
in place,
Right.
it's become even more necessary to have someone keep track of those things for you, right? So if you're based in New Jersey, but for whatever reason you've built this crazy following in New Hampshire, and now you're selling thousands of dollars worth of product in New Hampshire, you're likely going to have to pay sales tax to the state of New Hampshire, right?
Mm.
Or Florida or wherever, right? But
Right.
you're going to start to build what they call a nexus in that state, and they're going to expect that you're going to remit sales tax. So even just knowing that is a couple of things, right? So QuickBooks has added a feature where it'll track it for you and it'll tell you if you now have to pay it in those states.
Mm.
But there are other services that offer it. TaxJar is one. Avalara has one where you can basically just essentially check your work or check if you have a liability. They'll walk you through it. They'll help you make the payments. But sales tax is major. And then you're also going to have, like, a consulting business won't necessarily have costs of goods. So the cost of your sale. So if you purchase a product to sell it, or if you're manufacturing something where you had to put all the pieces together, those are going to be considered more of a cost of goods because you had to build a product to then sell it to a customer, which is going to change how your reports look essentially. So it's going to come off the top line of your income before your expenses. Whereas in consulting, depending upon what you're consulting on, I had a CPA my first year in business tell me, well, in our business, we don't really have a lot of expenses. It's like we're not a lot of overhead and we don't really need an office space. And, that's it. We just got to pay, high taxes and that's that. And I was like, I don't know. So I have an office space and I travel for conferences. I travel to meet clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
So keeping track of all of those things, my mileage, my gas, just in case, like depending on which method my new CPA wants to use, because that guy and I couldn't vibe.
Right.
But it's going to come down to your business, right? So really, if you have a product, you're going to want to keep track of all the stuff that you've purchased pertaining to that sale, the space
Mm-hmm.
that you had to maybe rent to house it. If you had to go with let's say a co-packer or somebody else, these are all expenses that you're going to build on your side. Whereas a consultant typically is coming on site as let's say a person, an individual, or a team, and their service is what they're selling. So it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
But they might have to take a plane to get there, and maybe they had to stay in a hotel and they had to eat some meals on their way, so there are different sides to it. But I would say regardless, you're going to want to track all of it, right? So you're going to want to keep track of all the travel, all the products, all of the items that you've purchased, all of the stuff you've sold, all the sales tax you've paid. Like, you're going to want to keep track of all those things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then compiling it all together and then seeing how it breaks down with your CPA. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so another part of that, compiling it all together, like building those reports and getting that data, you have clients who are like, oh, I sell my biggest package, let's say photography. I do a wedding, I charge $13,000 and I make all this money in one day and it's great. But they don't realize that to do that wedding, they had to hire a second photographer, they had to rent a car, let's say they had to rent additional equipment. They had to do all these things to get to that 13. Whereas if they stayed in the studio and they did a round of, let's say, graduation portraits, and they racked up all of that in one day, not having to go somewhere, not having to pay someone else, not having to put gas in the car, was more profitable, right? But it's like, oh, this big cash surge, right? But the only way you're going to know that is by keeping track of it all.
And checking each month, like how much money are you actually making?
Yes. Right. So like, even when you've increased sales, that doesn't mean that your profit has increased, because maybe to get to those sales numbers, you had to spend some more money. You had to buy more product. You had to, maybe there was your product came in damage and now you had to buy it at a premium. Like, these things are all things that you're going to want to keep track of so that you can really determine if you're making money, right? Because maybe you're not. And if you are, how much you're making.
Right. Yeah. Like one time last year, I went out of stock on my product. So I had to pay extra to get a little bit airshipped to hold me over. I mean, my production was already in process, but I needed like a few weeks of stock to get me through because just my sales were fluctuating and it was more than I expected.
So hard. It's so hard to predict like inventory. It's so hard to, I mean, you can, that stuff is difficult, right? So you can track, you can keep track of all your inventory. This is when I had to reorder. This is how many I want to keep in stock. But let's say, you know, you sell me something and I tell this person, now they advertise it out and like now you get a surge of sales. That's just stuff that like, unfortunately, there's no one can predict that, right? When is it going to take off? Who's going to like look at this and click on it and, you know, spread the word. So that one is, that's a biggie.
Yeah. So I tried, I mean, I kept track of how much it costs and then I'm like, okay, that was expensive. I don't want to have to do that again, but it's just kind of like you adjust over time.
Yeah, definitely.
But without writing it, it could have easily been forgotten or lost or, you know.
Yeah, you would have like, oh, I wonder why I paid all that shipping in June. Like, but knowing this is what happened and following that flow, you can really get an idea of that.
Yeah. So for people that maybe have been in their business a little while now, but they've been doing the numbers on their own and they come to you and they say, you know, okay, I'm ready to have a bookkeeper or I just can't be managing this anymore. What are some of the mistakes that you see that they've made before they come to you?
So I've seen a lot of miscategorization, right? Okay. So putting something into the wrong account is fairly common. Another one, I have a rule: do not use the other accounts, other income, miscellaneous income, other expenses, uncategorized, right? So I've seen people where they have thousands of dollars in, let's say, this other business expense category. And it's like, well, what's in there? I don't know. I don't remember. That's big, right? Yeah. So when you do your report and you're like, oh, there's this big lump sum in other, it's not helpful to you, it's not helpful to your CPA, it's helpful to literally no one, right? Yeah. So I make it a rule, we don't use any of the other accounts, nothing miscellaneous. A lot of times people will come and they haven't reconciled their books. That one is actually a really, really, really common one. So they haven't reconciled against the bank. And sometimes that's the red flag that they're like, oh, you know, my balances are off. So if you see what your book balance is versus your checking account balance and you're like, oh, something's off, I should probably get some help. You should probably get some help. That's probably a big one. But I've seen it where they haven't checked, right? And sometimes it's that they just don't even know that that's a thing, that they haven't, no one's ever told them to reconcile their books because why would they, right? So I get it. But having them never been reconciled, it also makes it a lot harder to track where you went wrong. So if you have this off balance, trying to figure out where it is more difficult if you haven't done that like monthly checkup. I'm trying to think what else. People come in, you know, negative balances on, let's say, their balance sheet or their P&L, and they don't even bat an eye. And I'm like, that's not normal. If you have, you know, negative $10,000 in job supplies, there's probably something in there that's throwing it off. Or if you put a deposit into an expense category, it'll go negative, right? So I've deposited money and I put, let's say I've put them too close together. I had, you know, job supplies income, job supplies expenses, and I just chose the wrong one. It's going to flip that to that negative. So yeah, I think those are some pretty big ones that I can think of.
And do you suggest for people to have, is there a need for them to have more than one bank account? Or not really? Like I know some people for like maybe saving for taxes or things like that might have multiples.
I have seen it where people set up, let's say, a savings account. But so like, you know yourself best, right? So if you know that your Chase checking and your Chase savings are easily connected and you can transfer the money in 2 seconds and you're likely to spend that tax money, then I always suggest going outside to like a different bank, right? So I have a Amex personal savings that I use because it's high yield. So while I'm collecting my money for taxes, I can get some interest paid on it, which is great. But But I've also in the past, I've set it up for clients. There's a product called Capital. It's Qapital, where you can set an automated, you can attach it to your business bank account and say, for every deposit, I want you to withhold 30%. And it goes right into an online savings account. You don't touch it, it just stays there. And then when you're ready to pay your taxes, you have more than enough. You should have more than enough, right? So you can set up rules for stuff like that, which I find to be very helpful. But there isn't, unless you're following, there's something called the profit first method. Unless you're following something like that, there's really not a need for multiple bank accounts. But people will also get, when they go to Chase and they're like, oh, you opened a credit card. If you open another checking account, you get this bonus or you get this free thing or whatever it is. And now I see people are moving money to these two checking accounts and like, oh, they'll write a check and now they have to transfer it over. That's just more stressful. Honestly, that's just more stressful. So trying to manage where it is and who moved it and what did you transfer, and I don't see the point in it. Checking, credit, sometimes I do see the point in different credit cards for different points options or rewards or whatever that might be. But to have multiple bank accounts for no reason.
Yeah. I somehow ended up with two and I closed the other one because I said, but now I have to pay fees on this other one and I'm not,
Right. So they're like, oh,
so
here's this free toaster. Yeah. Like, here's this free toaster for starting a checking account. And you're like, oh, and 3 months later, they start hitting you with a minimum fee or whatever it is. And you're like, oh, I got to go cancel that. But people don't do it.
Yeah.
And then they racked up fees for like a year. Right?
Yeah, it's true.
You paid for that.
Yeah. And that adds, You paid for like 10 toasters.
Yeah, 10 toasters. You could have just bought a toaster.
You could have bought all your friends' toasters too. Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the stuff, the giveaways, the gimmicks, like they're always gonna get their money back.
Yeah, and it's the same for like credit cards and stuff too.
Yeah. Like credit cards, the rule is that you pay the balance in full at the end of the month. That's golden rule per your, I can guarantee it, probably per your mom, your CPA, your bookkeeper, everyone in your life is going to tell you pay it in full. Because once you start to accrue interest, all of the points go out the window. Everything that you have used that credit card for is no point.
Yeah. And it's the same for, personal or business. Doesn't matter because you're still, you don't want them to take your hard-earned money.
That's one thing. I think Mint is the product that has it, or at least it used to be. You could plug in if you had different credit cards, and it would tell you, according to the interest rate, which one you should pay off first. So a lot of people will look at their credit cards and say, oh, on this one I owe $9,000, and on this one I owe, $3,000. I'm going to try and pay the $9,000. But if the $9,000 has, let's say, no interest or zero, like very low interest for a year and a half or whatever their rate is, and that $3,000 has something like 26% interest, you should actually focus on paying the smaller one first. But people get hung up on, well, I want to pay off this big chunk of money. So, I mean, Mint, I think, has it in products, but there's just like credit card calculators out there. So if you're struggling with trying to figure out what order to pay things in, just Google it and it'll come up. It's like there's a snowball method. There's all these things where you can say, I can pay X, and it'll help you just pay it down faster and less interest.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And because sometimes people might also have business loans, for example. And so they could use some of that same methodology.
Right. So like if you have, let's say, a line of credit and they've given it to you at 2%, some crazy number, right? And then you have this credit card that you're like, oh, I'm going to keep paying, I'm going to pay it down. It might make more sense to use your line of credit with very low interest to pay your credit card with very high interest, and then concentrate on just paying the balance down with the lower interest rate. But I mean, they don't teach you that stuff in school. Like I had to look that up, you know?
Yes.
I had to go seek that out and figure that out. Like, especially the high-low balance thing. I was like, well, I want to pay off a big chunk. I don't want to pay off this little one. Like, oh, that guy can wait. But that one might be costing me hundreds of dollars a month.
Yeah. No, for real, the need for finance basics in school is huge. Like, and I mean in like whatever, high school and college, like the minute you go to college, it's like oh, here's a credit card and a free t-shirt.
Yep.
Same kind of thing for business. They could come to with, oh, congratulations, you're opening your business. Like, here's all this stuff. And by the way, here's our credit card. And then you end up,
I have several Google Home Minis at home for when I opened it was like my Con Ed account or something. It was like my electric, and they were like, oh, we're giving out these, if you sign up for this promotion, they're sitting on my shelf. Or you get a free iPad if you sign up for this type of service, whatever it is. Yeah. It's all the same. And for kids especially, like, oh, a free iPad.
Yeah. Right.
Super exciting,
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess I call it like financial fitness is major.
Oh, I like that.
My mom is like diligent. She swipes her debit card. She writes it in her check register. Like, she knows exactly how much money she can spend at any given moment. And I admire it. I mean, I grew up in more of the, we don't carry cash. So like everything is swipe. I just check my online banking, but hit yet, or there's a check outstanding. Like, she is on it. She always knows her balance, and it's admirable. But they don't teach that anymore.
No, you're totally right. And that's, wow. Yeah. That's a really good way to approach it, because you really need to know your money, I think. And it's an area that a lot of people struggle with, like, just in general in their business. And what I've learned, through the last couple of years too, is just, if you don't know your numbers, you're like stuck, or like you don't have a business, you work so hard and then you don't really have a business because you're not really making money.
Yeah. There's a book that I read. It's called The 30-Day Money Cleanse. Ashley.
Yes. Feinstein, Gerstley. Yes.
Thank you.
The fiscal femme. She's amazing.
But she speaks about, you don't have to be rich to set up a savings account, right? Like, you don't have to make tons of money to be debt free, or to put a little money away, or save up for that goal, or whatever it is that you have. There's methods to doing it. So if you're doing it right, and you're essentially following her rules, right? But essentially, if you're doing it right and you're really focused on that goal, you can get there. You don't have to make a ton of money to be in good shape, essentially. Right? Just play by the rules.
Yeah. I love her. She just did her, did you see her Arianna Grande parody video on saving? Oh, I'm going to send it to you. I'll link it in the show notes too for people, because it's all about savings. So she did, she's an Ariana Grande super fan. So she like saw the video, the 7 Rings video, and it's all about buying, what you want and spending your money. So she did a parody about saving money, and I was in the background as a groupie. It was super fun to record. Yeah. And it's great. It's great. And so she talked all about saving money. So it really helps with perspective on like how you approach things.
Yeah.
In your business or personal or whatever.
There's Business Boutique is another one. Christy
Wright.
Yes, thank you. She's major on paying for everything in cash, right? And she follows a method where you have no debt. And people are like, oh, that's impossible. No, it's not. If you this is your goal and this is something that you want to work towards, you're gonna make it happen, right? So she speaks about having, if she lost her job, if she became disabled, she would not have to worry about paying a car note, right? Or her monthly finance or whatever it is. She's not gonna have to worry about that credit card debt hanging over her head. So there are ways to do it, putting money to the side, using something like Capital, like I said, where you're automatically squirreling money. Like, you don't even notice, right? As soon as the deposit hits, they take the money, like, you don't even know it's there. So like, out of your mind, it's not your money to spend, just put it to the side. For me, I found is the best method. I'm not going to spend it if I don't even think about it. It's just going wherever it's going, and then I can, write the check when I need to.
Right. So. Yeah, it makes a big difference. Versus thinking that you have it in your account and it's not really money that you should be spending. That's way more stressful and doesn't really end up.
And that's especially for a small business owner, because cash flow can be so difficult. You will, rob Peter to pay Paul, right? Like, so you're trying to keep everything in the air. You're trying to keep everything going. So and some people just get desperate. They're like, I have to make this sale, or I know if I can do this, it's going to produce this, right? So they will spend that tax money and then wind up either paying a penalty, interest, or both, or a fine, or whatever it is. But ultimately, if you if you follow the rules, right? If you're putting that money aside and you're really pretending that it's not yours and you don't have it, you're more likely to then find other ways to get what you need done.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. That's great advice. I totally believe that.
Yeah.
It's way less stressful.
Yeah. That's the other thing, like anxiety late at night and like, trying to fall asleep and you're like a pit in your stomach and you're worried about how you're going to figure this all out. It's hard. And also, I guess we're like kind of off topic, but community, like asking for help. How did someone else do it? Or just, hey, I saw that you figured this out, do you mind showing me? A lot of people have no problem sharing like how they did it or how they figured it out or what their method was, or, I mean, and thankfully, knock on wood, but I haven't come across anyone that's like, oh God, like, why are you asking me that question? How dare you? Like, it's not a thing.
Oh, that's a great point too. I mean, that's what even the Transitions Collective is all about. So that's a really great point for like being able to reach out to other people and ask them how they did something.
Embarrassing or shameful or anxiety inducing as like it may be for you, it's probably not that bad. Like, probably not, or it's definitely not something somebody hasn't seen before. Right.
Other people are living through it. You're not the only one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
there's like strength in numbers and all
that.
Exactly. Numbers. But yeah, even in the accounting community, I have probably, if I got stuck on something right now, I have 5 people I could call and be like, hey, can't figure this out. What do I do?
That's fantastic.
People ask me all the time, like, hey, how did you, what do you spend on advertising, or how did you get started, or what? No problem. Sure, right? Like,
right.
Why not? If I can help somebody else figure it out. I don't find that we have that much competition, at least not in my industry. I don't find it to be like a thing. And that's a general vibe. So people that you tend to gravitate towards.
Right. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So I have another question that I ask all of the interviewees on my show, all of the guests on my show. What is one thing from corporate America that you have learned or used that's helped you in your own business?
Or I thought you were going another way with that.
Oh.
What's one thing from corporate America you don't miss?
You could tell us that too. That list is probably long.
Yeah, well, I'll honestly say, so I'll tell you that one first, right? So the one thing I probably don't miss the most is that, so the last major company I worked for was perception is reality was their thing.
Okay.
So let's say I worked till 12 o'clock at night. My boss knew that, and I walked in and I said, you know what, I'm not going to come in until 10 the next day. The eyes said, watch you when you came in at 10 o'clock. It's like, oh, God, Kelly, she can never get here before 10. Like, oh, so lazy. Right. But I'm also saying goodnight to everybody as they walk out the door at 6, and I'm there. Right. So that perception is reality. I guess actually that has also helped me the other way around, because now I'm like, I will not be that person. I have no interest in having somebody feel that way if they're working with me or for me. And I don't ever want to put that anxiety onto someone else, like having to feel or having to pretend like they've got it all figured out or whatever it is. Right. So I said, I guess that actually goes both ways. But I would say probably just my use of like systems. I was very lucky that I worked for a corporation, and then I went to work for one of their vendors, and it was because I understood the system very well, right? So I was lucky enough to get into software and understanding it and using it, which has obviously helped me in what I'm doing now, working with like different apps and software companies, and just kind of thankfully understanding computer systems, generally speaking, I guess you would say. Or I would say I'm calling them computer systems. Most people say apps or programs. I get yelled at all the time. They're apps. But they used to be called computer systems when I was younger.
And just all the tech stuff in general. A lot of people like shy away from tech. They're afraid of it, or they don't understand it. And they don't usually embrace it. You know, people are not as likely to like embrace change. So
I would be the first one. I'm like, we're getting something new. Can you try it out?
Yeah.
Okay, set me up. I'll do it. Like, I love that stuff. and corporations have more money to play with. So there's something new, let's say they scrap it, but like I got the experience of trying that new system or trying this new method or whatever it is. So I would say I was fortunate for that. Yeah. That was a good thing.
That's great. Yeah, I like that one. Thank you for sharing. Okay, and last but not least, can you tell everyone where they can find more about you? We'll link everything up in the show notes.
Okay. So my website is totallybooked.nyc. And on Twitter, it's at totallyBookedNY. Facebook is the same, Totally Booked NY or Totally Booked NY New York. You will find me. Trying to think of what else I might be on. I'm pretty sure that's
LinkedIn. We can put your LinkedIn.
I am on LinkedIn. Yes, thank you. So my company is on LinkedIn. It's Totally Booked, but then I am also on LinkedIn, Kelly Gonsalves. We can put that link. And then I have, if you're in New York City and you're interested in accounting and or finance, I will be at the accounting and finance show in New York at the Jacob Javits Center in July. I'll be on a panel, and then I'll also be speaking about international payments. So it's a free show to attend. Definitely, if you're in the area, come by.
Oh, great. We'll put that, I'll get the link from you. We'll put that in the show notes.
If we have any bookkeepers and or accountants or anyone in that space listening, I do a New York City meetup so that we can, so like,
that's super fun.
Like, let's meet, and, you know, if you have questions, you want to learn about something new. So I always say, you know, even if you're just starting out, you're curious, you're not sure where to go, how to do it, there's always somebody in the room that has a story to tell. So I try and do them once a month. Like I have one tonight. We have a CPA visiting from Australia. It's a big deal. Cool. Kind of like the famous app person. So like I sound really geeky right now. Like she's all into the apps and she's going to show us all this stuff. But that was
great.
So, yeah, we try and do something like that once a month.
Pretty cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, no worries.
And thanks for being on the show. I appreciate all of your insight, and I'm sure people are walking away less scared about bookkeeping.
Totally. Oh, on my website, you can book 20 minutes with me if you have questions, something that is either bothering you, you're stuck, you don't know where to go, you're not sure how to find a bookkeeper. I can assist you in finding the way.
Awesome. Thanks. We'll make sure we put that too.
Cool.
In the show notes. Okay. Thanks, Kelly. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye. Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Kelly. I thought she gave so many great tips and advice around what to do with your money and some of the mistakes that she sees people make. Also, the fact that she talked about systems and how to set up your system, and you know, you can start small if you need to, but scale it as you find you're spending too much time working on these things and working too much in spreadsheets. I used spreadsheets for a long time, but I justified it because I didn't really have much activity, or they were very simple in terms of what I had to track. So it worked for me at the time, and it worked for my accountant as well. And then as I gradually got bigger or had more transactions, I was able to adopt and use other things. So I love that she talked about that. I also love that she talked about some of the mistakes that people make and, you know, not categorizing things enough. So even in my Excel documents, I was really painstakingly putting in, you know, if it was an expense for a product purchase, or it was mostly either product purchase or other materials, packaging materials, and charges in that nature for brief transitions. But I agree, you don't want to end up being lost in what your expenses were for that you recorded. So anything you can do throughout the year to help you, it will save you time later. And lastly, the part about spending time at a minimum each month looking at your numbers, I found that very helpful as well. So I block in my calendar, actually, I think it's on the second or the third day of the following month that I look at my numbers from the previous month, because all of my Amazon data has come in by then for the final day of the month. And then I can look at everything in one time and just be in my systems all at once, checking up on everything. So I hope you enjoyed this interview with Kelly. You can find more about her at totallybooked.nyc. We will have all of her information in the show notes. If you'd like to reach out to me, I am always at mary@thetransitionscollective.com. Please feel free to join our email list, visit thetransitionscollective.com, get on there. You'll receive weekly updates with videos like this when they release, other events that I'm doing either in person or online, and just what's kind of going on with people. You'll get features from the community and all sorts of fun stuff. So go there, sign up, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thanks. Bye.